Hello, everyone. My name is Vlad Bogin. I'm the founder and CEO of Cromos Pharma, a US-based international CRO with strong presence in Central and Eastern Europe. I'm a physician and still practice medicine part-time, which gives me a balanced perspective on how our drug development efforts affect the lives of real patients. In the past, I've worked as a PI, consulted for biotech companies, and held a directorship position with one of the largest pharma. Today, I will be talking about the pros and cons of conducting clinical trials in Central and Eastern Europe. For some of you, the definition of Central and Eastern Europe may not be completely clear, and you're not alone. On this slide, you can see that there isn't a comprehensive agreement on which countries constitute this region. There's some discrepancy between different stakeholders as to the countries that should be considered Central and Eastern Europe. For practical purposes, we believe that the countries in the right column should be included in this list. Please note that some of the countries are members of the European Union and some are not. This is important because they have very different regulatory processes for study approvals between EU and non-EU members. Additionally, if you plan to register your therapeutic with EMA, starting in 2022, you would need to include one of the EU countries in your pivotal trials. So why should a biotech or a pharma company consider Central and Eastern Europe in its clinical research programs? We believe that the most compelling reason is the unbiddable patient recruitment. The region, for the most part, still operates under the principles of the so-called Semashko healthcare model. What this means is that upon initial screening and diagnosis, the patients get referred to specialized medical centers. These centers are usually very large clinics and hospitals that cover exclusively a specific field of medicine. In the left lower corner in this picture, you see a Bakolev Cardiovascular Center in Moscow that only treats patients with cardiovascular diseases. They perform more coronary interventions and open heart surgeries than any place in the world. Same applies to mega hospitals in other fields of medicine, such as oncology, rheumatology, ophthalmology, infectious diseases, and so on. When we approach such centers, we often get dozens of patients in pre-screening from the outset. The population of Central and Eastern Europe is over 500 million, which is a formidable number. They're ethnically diverse, often drug naive, and generally have a positive outlook on clinical trials. The investigators that we work with are well-trained, proficient in English, and have been in clinical research for many years. Thus, most sites and investigators have been participating in clinical trials, and most have been audited by the regulators. The reasons why investigators are eager to participate in clinical research is multifold. They view trials as a way to access the most advanced technologies. They very much enjoy interacting with their colleagues abroad, and they're also thrilled when the research they partake in results in a high-impact publication. And last but not least is the financial component. The investigator grants, albeit more modest than what you see in Western countries, are still incomparable to the salaries of the investigators and constitute a significant source of income for these doctors. High data quality is the cornerstone of successful clinical program, and we're often asked about how CE region stacks up against Western Europe and North America. In the slide, you see the up-to-date data set collected directly from the FDA website. You can see the US is the undisputed leader in the number of inspections. However, if you look at the number of findings represented as percentage points, CE region, on the most part, is doing better than its Western counterparts. The reasons for such stellar performance has a lot to do with the engagement of the investigators that I've outlined above. After data quality, timely conduct and completion of the trial is probably second most important factor for most sponsors. In this table, you can see the startup timelines in the region. Please note that this data set is based on our own experience over the last couple of years. In light blue, is the time from submission to regulatory approval, and in dark blue is the time from submission to first site initiation. Most would agree that these are very reasonable timelines that are on par or better than in other geographies that you may consider. So now that we've talked about the positives, let's discuss the potential challenges with conducting clinical research in Central and Eastern Europe. When performing feasibility, we'll always pay much attention to the potential differences in the standards of care between the country of study origin and our region. This can be critical when studying patients who are hospitalized. As an example, I like to point out the ICU studies where treatment algorithms are multiple, complex, and intertwining. There are situations when local study algorithms do not include the most advanced Western treatments. Sometimes such treatments haven't been registered yet, and sometimes they're too expensive for the respective healthcare system to cover. This is when we have to become creative. Sometimes it makes sense for a sponsor to cover the competitor in question. Sometimes it is not feasible from the financial standpoint. And at times, the situation is actually advantageous for the sponsor. They're often able to test their drugs against the older standards of care and avoid going head-to-head with the most novel treatments. Well, this would be unethical in places where new treatments are available. It is very much acceptable in the countries where they are not. Same applies to the use of most advanced diagnostic modalities. Not every medical center that we work with has a PET CT scan, but again, we try to be creative and often perform such things by contracting neighboring medical centers. Not every laboratory test can be performed locally, and as part of feasibility, we determine which tests need to be outsourced to other labs or to central laboratories. While most of the studies can be successfully conducted in Central and Eastern Europe, based on our experience, the following types of trials are most conducive. The region does well with late-stage trials where large patient cohorts are required. We also do very well with biosimilar trials with treatment-naive populations, difficult to enroll in rescue studies, and given the cost advantage for the studies that may have some budgetary constraints. So let me go through some of the examples of clinical trial conduct, which is based on our own experience and which hopefully will shed the light on how we do in certain sort of trial situations. So the first example in the case study is a biosimilar oncology trial. It was a phase 3 breast cancer trial with a biologic. The sample size was 520 patients. The recruitment was initiated in Western Europe and was rather poor, and thus Cromos was asked to devise a rescue plan. You can see on the right the venues that we've selected and the number of sites, and we're very proud of the fact that within 3 months we randomized our first patient. And you can see at the bottom on the right the input in the enrollment after 6 months. We were initially tasked with recruiting 295 patients and achieved a recruitment result of 463 patients, which basically was double of what almost double of what we were asked for. We subsequently had an EMA audit, which we passed with flying colors. The second case study is another oncology rescue trial. It was a triple negative advanced breast cancer. It was a phase 2 study, and the target was 70 patients, and after 9 months, 12 US sites only enrolled 28 patients, and this is when the sponsor approached us and requested a rescue plan for our region. We initiated Georgia in 2.5 months, and 7 sites there enrolled 27 patients in 4 months. The next case study is cardiovascular rescue trial. It was a global 20-plus country trial, phase 3 trial in angina pectoris. Initially, a global CRO was responsible for our region, where they were trying to conduct a study in a trial in Georgia and Belarus. But unfortunately, after 9 months from study start, they still did not have a regulatory approval. This is when we were asked to join in, and we're able to get those studies approved rather rapidly. And in 3 months, we recruited 310 patients at 10 sites in Georgia and 110 patients at 5 sites in Belarus. And subsequently, the sponsor returned to us with additional clinical programs. The next case study is an autoimmune disease rescue. This was a phase 2 pediatric psoriasis program. Initially, it was destined to be run in the US only at 6 sites. After 4 months, unfortunately, the sponsor only enrolled 4 patients out of 48 desired. And this is again when we were approached. We recommended Ukraine and Georgia. We enrolled 27 patients in Ukraine and 10 patients in Georgia in 2 and 3 months respectively. After the study was completed, we were included in the next study, which was an adult psoriasis study. And we again proposed the same venues and recruited 40 out of the total of 50 patients. So this is a sort of our pitch slide that we use, and clearly the devil is in the detail. But in general, when you look at the region, you can expect up to 40% reduction in cost compared to Western Europe and North America. On average, we are faster than the same regions that I just mentioned, and usually we're at least 30% faster in recruiting patients. We have the lowest rates of audit findings, and this together constitutes clinical trial success. I would like to thank you for your time, and I would be very happy to take any of your questions or respond to any of your comments. Thank you.